This is a global emergency. Important news and information to follow.
We're going to talk about military tribunals, military police arrests of deep state traitors, and the potential lockdown of the United States under a declared national emergency. And I'll also explain why these are steps that must happen, that we should all support happening in order to save this republic from deep state traitors who are right now carrying out or attempting to carry out a political coup, an illegal, seditious coup to overthrow this country and nullify the outcome of a democratic election. I'm going to mention some of the documents here. We've got Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Senator Schumer, Adam Schiff, and Mark Warner having signed a letter now admitting that they are traitors to America, and they are calling on the FBI and the Department of Justice to defy the United States president in order to cover the deep state's criminal activity and keep it hidden from public scrutiny. So we are calling for the arrest of those individuals and literally thousands of others. What I'm going to bring you here right now in this video will blow your mind. I think it will open up your understanding of what's about to happen, and also why you should support this lockdown of the country, which some might call martial law.
So what exactly is martial law? Well, in the simplest terms, martial law means that the military has replaced the standing government. As such, the highest-ranking military official becomes the head of state, and the country's constitution, along with individual rights and freedoms, are suspended. Martial law is usually a response to a malicious, corrupt, or inefficient government and is imposed after a coup d'etat or political uprising.
He's the deputy attorney general under Jeff Sessions, who might be a brain-dead zombie at this point. We're not sure if he's even conscious. We have no idea. He's not present in this world. Is not doing anything. So Rod Rosenstein is running the Department of Justice, and he is using it as a weapon to try to carry out a political coup. Rod Rosenstein is one of many deep state traitors who will be arrested and tried with treason or sedition or some similar crimes and may spend the rest of his life in prison. But and by the way, there are thousands of these people. But how do we get there from where we are now? Well, it turns out that President Trump is, they say he plays 4D chess, right? He's already many moves ahead of the deep state. And all of this has been planned for such a long period of time. Trump is so far ahead of the deep state in this. And this executive order, as you will soon see, lays the groundwork for the criminal arrest and prosecution of Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and other deep state traitors, including James Comey and Loretta Lynch and many others, and Andy McCabe, even John Brennan, and so on. First of all, he declares a national emergency, and this national emergency has been in place since December 20th of 2017. And here it is. Here's the paragraph. This is President Trump. I therefore determine that serious human rights abuses and corruption around the world, again, the word corruption is key here, constitute an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and autonomy of the United States. And I hereby declare a national emergency to deal with that threat. Boom! Why does that matter? A couple more reasons. Stay with me on this. If you continue to read this executive order, it specifically talks about government corruption and the misuse of government resources to aid enemies of the United States. And that those are the people who are going to be essentially arrested and prosecuted and held under military tribunals. Specifically, Hillary Clinton, what did she do? She arranged for the sale of uranium to Russia-linked corporations. It's the Uranium One conspiracy, but it's a true conspiracy, where she and James Comey and Robert Mueller and others, even former U.S. Senator Harry Reid and Barack Obama, they all conspired to sell a strategic supply, a resource that's used in nuclear weapons and nuclear energy, uranium, to sell that out from underneath the United States and put it in the hands of foreign enemies of America, specifically Russia, and then Russia shipped the material to Iran. And then Iran was the recipient of tens of billions of dollars of internationally laundered illegal money that President Barack Obama arranged to have flown into Iran and offloaded on cargo planes, military cargo planes. And Obama, in order to do this, he bypassed all international banking regulations. He committed massive international crimes in order to carry this out. He engaged in massive money laundering. He committed numerous crimes, dozens of different crimes. And he did this in order to betray the United States by aiding and abetting foreign enemies of America, i.e. granting funding to Iran, as well as technical assistance, as well as uranium fuel, so that Iran could build nuclear weapons, ballistic delivery systems in order to threaten America's allies in the Middle East, namely Israel, with nuclear weapons, but also threaten so that Iran could threaten the United States. A lot of people don't know this. Barack Obama arranged for Iran to capture a U.S. drone, and the press ran a complete cover story on that. They claimed that Iran was able to do GPS spoofing to hack the drone and make it land on a runway in Iran. That's complete nonsense. First of all, the GPS signals are highly encrypted using, I think, 512-bit encryption. And in order to spoof those signals, you'd have to have something sitting even between the satellite and the high-altitude drone. You'd have to have a super high-altitude airplane of some kind, which Iran doesn't even have, and you'd have to have the ability to break 512-bit military encryption in real time. It may even be 1024-bit encryption. And Iran doesn't have that kind of decryption breaking technology either. Obama arranged for that drone to be flown into Iran and landed there in order to give America's enemies this technology. And he also did the exact same thing with a Navy vessel. Remember when those U.S. sailors were captured because a Navy vessel went into Iranian waters? And then John Kerry got involved and embarrassed the U.S. and bowed down to the enemies. This was all arranged under Barack Obama. Hillary Clinton, in her case, she accepted hundreds of millions of dollars in international bribes to her Clinton Foundation, which was a massive money laundering vessel. It was a shell front. They claimed it was a nonprofit. It was actually a money laundering system where she could accept bribes from international, even enemies of America or international industrialists or other people who had a lot of money overseas, including Russians and so on. And the excuse that was given was that, they were paying her to give a speech. So she would go somewhere and give a speech for 20 minutes, a speech that nobody wants to hear. She's the most boring speaker ever in politics, it seems. And then they would pay her, $50 million. Well, the $50 million isn't for the speech. The $50 million is a bribe, which is mentioned in here, bribery. A bribe for the future influence of a person they thought was going to be the president, President Hillary Clinton. And that as president, she would continue to betray the United States and continue to sell out the U.S. uranium supply and continue to sell out U.S. military secrets and continue Obama's agenda of systematically destroying the culture, destroying the U.S. economy, opening the borders to a floodgate of illegals, and causing race war conflict in the United States by heating up racial tensions instead of accomplishing racial healing, which was what people thought he was going to do when he was elected president. A lot of people voted for Obama in the hope that if we had a black president, that would finally prove that there could be racial unity in America and that America wasn't a racist nation. What they got instead was a president who stoked the flames of racial tension while aiding and abetting America's enemies. And this executive order signed by President Trump almost a year ago specifically targets the actions of Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and their co-conspirators, which include, by the way, Loretta Lynch, Eric Holder, perhaps, but definitely Andrew McCabe, John Brennan, Peter Strzok, James Comey, and literally thousands of other people throughout the deep state apparatus who I believe must now be arrested. That we are operating under a national emergency system. And on top of that, President Bush declared a state of war in September of 2001. that state of war has never been rescinded or resolved. And that, of course, was put in place shortly after the attacks on September 11, which brought into law the Patriot Act that, what a coincidence, was already written and ready to go and just waiting for the right event to roll that out so that the government could spy on the American people. And it was the Patriot Act that ultimately put more power in the hands of the FISA court. Even though the FISA court existed before that, it was granted a lot more power to spy on Americans under the guise of spying on only foreign nationals and only terrorists. Well, it was Barack Obama and Loretta Lynch and Peter Strzok and James Comey that used those powers granted under the Patriot Act that came out of the 9/11 terrorist attacks to spy on President Trump and attempt to defeat him so that he could not win office, and then to overthrow him through a very carefully planned deep state political coup. All of these activities relied on the secret spying apparatus that was brought into life, really, in September of 2001 under President Bush. And it's no surprise, by the way, President Bush is, of course, or former President Bush, is a deep state operative. You know, these people are all deep state rhinos. They are warmongers. They are not, pro-America people in the way that President Trump is a pro-liberty, pro-constitution, let's make America great again kind of guy. I think the Bushes were not like that. They were like, make the Bushes powerful again. They weren't really about America. They were about the Bushes. They were about the secret society. They were about the deep state. And that's how they used their power back then to create these deep state powers that have been abused and exploited and weaponized against the American people ever since. And by the way, President Trump knows what happened on 9/11. Yeah, I mean, he can't say it publicly because so many people have been taught the false narrative, the official government story, which is complete and utter nonsense, violates the laws of physics. But Trump knows the real story. You just won't hear him ever talk about it. Just know that he knows about it. In fact, he used to talk about 9/11 because, remember, he's a New Yorker. And he followed this very closely after the attacks in 2001. So he knows what's up. And he knows, he knew the firefighters and the rescue workers and the police officers and the construction people and the architects and all those people who really know what happened in 9/11. And Trump knows that Building 7 was, of course, pulled deliberately. We'll use that term pulled just to avoid freaking people out. See. Now, the average American just walking around today has no idea that we are, number one, under a state of war, and number two, under a declared national emergency. They have no clue. So they do not understand that the president right now has absolute power to essentially mandate or order every branch of government to do his bidding. Trump needs the Pentagon's loyalty. Trump needs the Pentagon in a friendly relationship because Trump plans to call on the Pentagon to deploy military police to make mass arrests of deep state traitors, and also then to hold military tribunals for those individuals. This, when combined with the other executive order that I mentioned earlier, which declares the state of emergency, and then this martial law executive order establishes the ability of military tribunals to arrest and try non-military individuals, i.e. Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Peter Strzok, John Brennan, all these others, to try them for their acts of treason against the United States carried out during a state of war under a national emergency. And by the way, we've been under a national emergency for much longer than just since last year, because Obama declared a national emergency, I think in 2012 as well. It's very interesting that Obama declared a national emergency in anticipation of another Democrat taking the White House. Obama's executive order grants the president the absolute power to control all communications assets in the country, which means the president, whoever that happens to be, and they thought it was going to be Hillary Clinton, the president can take over and control the internet, all media outlets, every social media website, Facebook, Google, YouTube, Twitter, and every TV station, everything. So you put that together with what Trump has signed and what is about to be unleashed when these classified documents are finally made public, it is going to be a political shitstorm of such magnitude that you have never seen before, that this country has never seen before since the Civil War. In effect, what I believe is likely to happen, and also what I believe should happen, is the following. President Trump must have Brett Kavanaugh confirmed for the U.S. Supreme Court. He must be active on the court before this plan is unleashed. Once he's active on the court, Trump has that extra buffer space of additional support, because the Supreme Court is probably the only body at that point that can have any kind of a counter to the executive commands of the commander-in-chief operating under a national emergency and a time of war. Once that happens, Trump will perhaps initially call for the mass firing of individuals inside the FBI and the DOJ who are blocking his release of these classified documents. Once the documents, and he will fire however many people it takes to get to somebody who will release the documents. Once the documents are released, what happens is there's this mass reaction across the independent media. The left-wing media will try to cover it up because it's going to expose massive treason and treasonous complicity on the part of the left-wing media itself. There will be journalists who will be arrested. I mean, so-called journalists. You can't even really call them journalists anymore. They're left-wing activists and traitors. But they think of themselves as journalists, and they work for organizations like the Washington Post and the New York Times and CNN. And some of those people are going to be arrested, as they should, because they're not even journalists. They are seditious traitors who are trying to carry out a political coup, and they are complicit in the deep state's effort to try to carry out this coup. And they have deliberately, they know that the Russia hoax is fake. They know that it's all a hoax, but they're going along with it anyway because they are traitors and they're carrying out acts of treason in a time of war, in a time of national emergency, treason against the United States of America. Trump will have them sooner or later arrested, potentially by military police, and held for trial under military tribunals, which has been, again, confirmed by this more recent executive order. So once the documents come out, there will be a massive, massive reaction. And you will see members of the independent media and the conservative media then calling for mass arrests of individuals. And it is this widespread calling for mass arrests that will trickle into the Senate, and it will trickle into the House, and it will trickle into the public consciousness. And it is from that enhanced public consciousness that Trump will be able to order the arrest, the military arrest, and the military trials of these individuals. And there are thousands of them who have committed treason against the United States of America, because once the records come out, it is just like clockwork. The public will be astonished. This is beyond anything like Pulitzer Prize winning news. This is bombshell of all bombshells. This is the mother of all bombshells, the Moab bombshell, you might say. This is the biggest political scandal in the history of our nation. This is the greatest abuse of power, or the most malicious abuse of power in the history of our nation. And by the time it's all said and done, people like Barack Obama will have either fled the country, which I think is the most likely outcome, or he will be arrested and imprisoned. And people like Peter Strzok will probably be arrested and imprisoned. And people like Andrew McCabe will be arrested and imprisoned. And during this time, this is important to understand. This is obviously very compelling information that you need to know. During this time, the minute that these documents come out and you start to hear public calls for the mass arrests of these treasonous, seditious actors, deep state operatives, the left is going to go insane. The left is going to essentially attempt to invoke mass national chaos. This is, I think, Rule 5 of Rules for Radicals. I think it's Alinsky, right? Is to cause mass chaos. And they will call for bombings, they will call for arson, they will call for mass shootings. There are left-wing groups such as Antifa and Red Guards who will be handed orders by the Democrat Socialists of America, probably, or other communist-leaning deep state officials and ex-officials such as John Brennan, who is a communist, And that's why Trump yanked his security clearance, by the way. But these radical left-wing groups will be handed these marching orders, and they will be told, here, you go bomb this building, you go murder that Supreme Court justice, you go try to kill Alex Jones, you go, set this city on fire, whatever. I mean, it's going to be insane. Because at that point, they know it's over for them if they can't cause mass chaos. In other words, if due process and law and order are allowed to march forward at the normal civil pace, then all of these left-wing traitors, their entire system collapses, their coup collapses, they go to jail, and the Democrat Party and the deep state are both discredited for a generation. I mean, this is 1,000 times bigger than Watergate ever was. And the New York Times will be completely discredited. CNN may collapse. They may have to shut it down. Nancy Pelosi may end up in prison, and Adam Schiff, I have no doubt that he will end up behind bars. So during this time, President Trump, I believe, will appeal to the people, the patriots of America. And this is really a very important piece of this. I'm actually appealing to President Trump to appeal to the people, because the people can help. There may be a time of such incredible chaos when we are in practically a civil war, where Trump is engaging in the mass arrests of these deep state operatives, where Trump has even declared martial law, or something similar to martial law that maybe is effectively martial law, where deep state operatives are hiding out. Maybe Obama flees the country. Maybe Adam Schiff is in hiding in a bunker somewhere, like Hitler's bunker somewhere. I don't know. Where some of these left-wing journalists, who are really not journalists, but they're deep state operatives, where they flee and they try to disappear. Where all these things are happening. And the claim will be that Trump has become Hitler. Oh my God, he's become Hitler. He has declared martial law. He has become a dictator, and the resistance must fight him. That's going to be the narrative. It's practically that narrative right now. But during this time, we, the people, must recognize that no, Trump is not trying to become a dictator. Trump is trying to stop the dictatorship that is globalism and deep state control. Trump is trying to give us back our country. And in order to do that, he is going to have to go through a period of a lockdown, of a military lockdown. And he will need our support to help maintain some semblance of law and order and civility across our cities and societies while the military arrests take place and the deep state actors and traitors are rooted out, arrested, tried, and either put behind bars or executed or whatever they decide to do. During this time, we, the people, must use our Second Amendment rights to defend our lives and to defend our nation and to defend and support our local law enforcement officers. We must help local police. We must help local sheriff's departments, and we must help maintain civility. And it's going to take a lot of millions of patriots in order to help do this. While President Trump is getting things done in Washington with the goal of eventually ending the lockdown, restoring things to normalcy, and allowing our elections to continue with an honest democratic system. And by the way, during all of this, Trump must issue a directive of a national voter ID. No longer can illegal aliens be allowed to vote in U.S. elections. They are stealing this country with illegal votes. And so a national voter ID directive must be put in place and must be enforced. And this has to be nationwide. And at the same time, the mayors of sanctuary cities who are protecting illegals, who are committing murders and rapes and other violent crimes, those mayors must be arrested and prosecuted for their complicity in aiding and abetting criminal felons. And even, I think, people like Jerry Brown, governor of California, who has declared California to be a sanctuary state, he must be arrested and tried for his crimes of aiding and abetting criminal felons who are murdering California citizens and getting away with it because of the sanctuary status of that state. So it's not just the deep state traitors in Washington, D.C. and Virginia and so on. It's also the traitors who run cities, the mayors of cities, even the governor of California in this case. It is so-called journalists who are actually deep state traitors, who are complicit. They are conspiring with deep state actors like Peter Strzok in order to deceive the American people by abusing and exploiting their power of editorial influence to lie to the American people and ultimately overthrow the constitutional republic that is the United States of America. So the arrests have to take place across the board. We, the people, have to support President Trump during this time. We've got to give him the time and the power to carry out this deep cleaning, this swamp draining activity, which could take a year. I don't know how long it's going to take. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention the executives of Google, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter must also be arrested and tried for their crimes against humanity, their conspiracy and racketeering crimes to overthrow the United States of America through massive election fraud and massive coordinated deplatforming of all conservative voices in order to steal the elections. So Google is guilty. Google has committed massive fraud, massive human rights abuses, and they've committed crimes against the United States of America, and so have the other tech giants. So if you're looking at all the arrests that have to take place to save America and give us back freedom and liberty and a true democracy where only American citizens vote and where your votes matter and where elections matter, and you don't have a deep state entity trying to overthrow every election whose outcome they disagree with, then you have to pursue these mass arrests of all of these deep state operatives and tech giant felons and so-called journalists who are really deep state activists, as well as sanctuary city mayors and so on. It has to be complete draining of the swamp. And the swamp is nationwide. The swamp is everywhere. And even Project Veritas has recently released videos. Kudos to James O'Keefe there, just an extraordinary individual, a true American hero, if you ask me, has shown that even these bureaucrats and government workers inside the DOJ and inside the State Department and other entities, they are all resisting Trump from inside and stealing government resources and using LexisNexis to run license plate searches on their targeted political enemies and engaging in the most outrageous crimes from inside the government. Those people need to be rooted out and arrested. And in order to achieve that, Trump is going to have to be given extraordinary power for a temporary period of time. Again, maybe 1 year. I don't know how long it will take to get this done. Personally, I am more than willing to grant Trump a lockdown status for 1 year to see this republic restored to its intended constitutional, liberty-oriented structure where the American people are back in charge again, instead of the deep state and the illegal aliens and the corrupt anti-American governors like Jerry Brown. We have to take back America, and it's not going to be pretty, folks. It's going to require a lockdown. It's going to require mass arrests, and we're going to have to defend our country against the incredible violence of the left, their attempted mass murders, their attempted executions, their attempted violence in the streets. They want bloodshed at that point, you see. They want mass chaos. Every successful communist revolution in world history has been carried out in a time of mass chaos and mass bloodshed carried out by the left. That's what they want. So they will try to use this time to sweep through the country. They will go door to door and try to murder conservatives. They will have hit lists of prominent conservatives to murder. They will have Sean Hannity's home address. They'll have Rush Limbaugh's home address. I'm sure somebody already has that. And they will send out hit teams to try to murder these individuals. And so it is, and Supreme Court justices and so on, only the conservative ones, of course. Of course, Ruth Bader Ginsburg will be spared because she's the hero of the left, even though she's suffering from chemo brain and has lost most neurological function at this point. But that's another story. Kind of like Nancy Pelosi. You ever notice the Democrats are being led by like neurological zombies at this point, and their followers are also kind of cult-like zombies. It's like Night of the Living Dead in the Senate at this point. It's really, you people, you think that you deserve to run this country? It's incredible. So that's the analysis. I don't know if I depicted enough details here, but you're going to be called on, if you're a patriot, you're going to be called on to help defend this nation. And in doing that, I urge you to do a couple of things. Number one, as a civilian, as an armed civilian, your job is not to go out and shoot people. Your job is to maintain peace, to support law enforcement, to support local police, sheriffs, and even National Guard troops, and also government contractors who I've been told are going to be deployed in 20 plus cities across America. Your job is to maintain peace, but also maintain strength for America. So if you're out there, don't go vigilante. That's what these left-wing Antifa people do. They're out there just trying to mass murder everybody. Our job as civilians is to defend this constitutional republic, defend our cities and neighborhoods and communities, and do not initiate violence, but definitely stop violence if the left is committing it. So if someone is walking up to your house with a Molotov cocktail and they're going to throw the Molotov cocktail and burn your house down, do you have the right to shoot them? Well, of course you do. If they are walking down your neighborhood and dragging people out of their homes and shooting them in the head like communists love to do you have the right to shoot them? Absolutely you do. This is not about initiating violence. It's about defending our republic, which we have a right to do. It is described in the Second Amendment. It's there for a reason. This is exactly what it's about. And frankly, I think these upcoming midterm elections have already been stolen by the tech companies with their selective censorship. So the midterm elections should be postponed at this point because Google has committed massive treason, massive election fraud. They've banned all the conservative voices off all the major platforms, including Facebook. So they've already stolen this election. And the media has been pushing all these absolute lies and disinformation, false information to try to steal the election. They're going all out. And this election is already stolen. But hey, maybe the American people get that and they're going to show up in droves and vote out the Democrats, which is frankly what needs to happen. I say God bless America. I say support our president. I say defend your nation. I say drain the swamp.